Hey, church, I'm here with Jon, pastors City of Lights Church in Indianapolis. And so, Jon, we're here to have a conversation.
Yeah, man. Great to be here. Honored to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your growing up in Indy. You haven't lived in Indy your whole life, so I'm in Nashville and stuff. But
yeah, so I grew up here in Indianapolis. My dad's from Indy. Was technically born in Tulsa while my dad was in seminary, but moved here when I was, moved back here when I was about 3. So grew up downtown, whether it was on the Near East Side, Hawville, kind of Heron Morton area, back before the yoga studios and juice bars, and loved growing up downtown. I actually, have incredibly fond memories. I love anytime we go on a date night, I'm like, hey babe, let's go downtown, because that's home for me. And was really blessed to be a part of a really diverse, kind of kingdom-reflective church when we were growing up in those early formative years. Really from when I was about 4.5, 5 until I was about 10.
How long ago was that?
That was, it was in the 80s. Okay, so I turned 42 this year.
Oh, okay.
So I've got a little bit of gray. The gray comes honest. But yeah, so we were really blessed. There was a church that God was stirring up in the Hawville area off of 16th Street, not far from Long. So it was anointed because Long's Donuts is there. But it started out, with about 60 people, and over the course of a couple years grew to over 1,000 people. It's pretty wild. But what was so amazing about it was it really was so many different ethnicities: Black, white, Hispanic, Filipino, Nigerian. Not just ethnic diversity, but socioeconomic diversity. We had people that were driving not only just in different areas around the city. I remember there's a family that would drive from Seymour to come. Wow. Because God was doing something. The guy would always say, "Alive is worth the drive," so he'd come up. But it was just this beautiful thing that God was doing. And when I would, early ages, 1st, 2nd grade, learn how to read my Bible, and I read about every tribe, tongue, and nation, and I'd go to church, and I'd hear all these languages, and I'd see all these different people, and we had missionaries coming, and it was just this beautiful thing. It was consistent. It was like, oh, this is like heaven.
Yeah,
this is what it looks like.
Taste of heaven.
And, unfortunately, there was different things that happened. There was some church splits, and my family would find ourselves looking for a new church home. And it was then, when we were visiting different churches, that I realized this isn't normal. And we'd go visit this church, and I go, Mom, where's all the black people? We go visit another church, and I'm like, Dad, where's all the white people? And then I go to another church, and I think, you don't have any Asians? Like, not one? Like, there's more Asians in the world than anybody? Wait, no Asians? And I became painfully aware of how segregated Sunday morning is. We're pretty familiar with this whole quote of Sundays still being the most segregated day of the year. And had you told me that prior to us, being in that church search, I'd have thought you were crazy. It wasn't until I really started to see the condition of the church, and not even on a broader scale, just in Indianapolis, that I was acquainted with that. And I think that particularly one of the big reasons that grieved me is because it wasn't representative of the city. Yeah. The city of Indianapolis is a lot more diverse than people recognize. Oftentimes growing up downtown, being a big Pacer fan, I grew up downtown.
Reggie Miller?
Oh my gosh.
Let's go.
It was like the height of, the Pacers-Knicks rivalry when we were living downtown, and we lived on that one-way street, Delaware, on the way out of the city, so people would pass us and they'd go by our house and throw us gear and different things. But I remember the whole headline was Knicks versus the Hicks. And this caricature of people from Indiana being in the cornfields. Now, mind you, we know there's lots of cornfields in Indiana, but growing up downtown, I'm like, I don't know about these cornfields. I know it's a vibrant city. There was all kinds of different people that were around me, and it grieved me that there weren't more churches, more communities of faith that actually reflected what was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you mentioned the word, what you saw downtown, and then what you saw in this church.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff I've grown to appreciate. I've watched a video of yours of you talking about racial reconciliation and racism, even in the church and in our country. And I love when you talk about seeing the way God sees and then seeing people. Can you speak a little bit
Absolutely.
to that?
So, at City of Lights, we talk about our 5 pursuits. Churches have, core values, this, that, and the other. For us, one of our 5 pursuits is honor. And I think that this concept of this word honor is really at the centerpiece of how we really have to approach racism, identity, all these different topics. And the way that we define honor is seeing one another the way God sees us. We honor God by seeing him appropriately. Yeah. That he is, yes, he's kind, he's near, he's gentle, he's a king, he's a Lord, he's the boss. I don't negotiate with God. I don't have.
We try.
I'm not at the negotiating table like, all right, if you give me this, I'll give you this. No, it's like he's the power position. He's the authority. In the same way, we have to learn to not just see, but speak over one another what God says and what he sees. And I think particularly if we would embrace that, it would begin to deal with, it's not like the magic answer, but I think that it begins to deal with those prejudices. It begins to deal with, I can't truly honor God and walk around with racism and hatred in my heart from someone of a different ethnicity. Yeah. I can't curse something that God blesses. But it goes a little bit beyond that as well, because I think that particularly when it comes to racial reconciliation or when it comes to engaging people from different socioeconomic places, the way that we see affects the way that we sow or the way that we respond to someone. So the ethnos, the diversity of humanity, it is from God. It is of God. It is blessed of God. I tell people all the time, when you go to heaven, if you don't embrace diversity now, it's going to be force-fed to you in heaven because it's not going to look like you. There's not going to be the Hamilton Hills section in heaven, right? It's not going to be the Fisher section. It's going to be the body, every ethnicity, every tongue, every tribe. And but because of that dissonance, sometimes people are even afraid to have the conversation. So I say relationship is a big thing. Connecting and hearing what people say rather than telling them, this is what you need. See, one of my, sarcasm here, one of my favorite statements that someone will say is, you know what the problem with you is? You know what the challenges are? Now, people have opinions, but that's not how you start a conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's building relationship and hearing what are the needs? What are you sensing? Tell me about this. Tell me about this. And also understanding that not one person of color represents all of them. Yep. That can often be a weight that folks feel as like they are the ambassador of the entire ethnicity they represent, for you. I think that there's a lot of different diversity within that. One of the things I would see a lot growing up is not just a diversity of ethnicity, but a big diversity point was socioeconomic. There are some, not all, again, I know this is like stating the obvious, but there can be based on what we see on television and the images that we see, caricatures that we build up in our minds of what blackness looks like, or what being Indian looks like, or what being Latin American looks like. And these caricatures that we attach based on music videos, news reports, movies, sports, and all of these things, rather than being able to specifically engage, yes, on a collective level, but getting to know people individually by their stories and seeing how do I see you, for you.
I feel like for our church, we probably have a whole lot less, I would say church, maybe our community.
Yeah.
We have a whole lot less problem with a person being a color as we do, we have, if someone walked into our church right now that was of a different socioeconomic, and that started causing us to be uncomfortable because of the way that they acted, the way that they, even our senses, like looked like or smelled like, it would cause us to be uncomfortable. And so I feel like our community or our church goes, well, we don't have a racism problem. Like we're cool. Like we're okay. and then we sometimes can be like, well, we'll help out. We have money. So God's blessed us. And I do believe it's a blessing. And something that we do can help other people, other churches that are downtown but then we don't want to get too close. So how do we get close? I know diversity was, and I would like for you also to speak to, there's diversity in Fishers, whether we realize it or not. We say, well, we're not really diverse, but we are. I've got many different type of people in my neighborhood. So I guess first, could you speak to that? How do we get close to people that aren't like us?
So part of it is opening your eyes, right? Part of it is just being aware and honestly inviting the Holy Spirit.
You find what you look for?
Yes. It's one of the things I actually talk to our people about all the time. We did this series called Circles, and we've been trying to really cultivate more of a heart and passion for the lost and engaging the lost. And I think, especially if you're around church people a lot, the thing that I almost hear every time is, well, I'm never around lost people. Yeah, you are.
All the time.
Open your eyes. It's like we're not allowing ourselves. We've gotten so, it's like our eyes are lazy a lot of times. It's like they're looking for shortcuts. They see what we want to see. And so if we actually dare to ask the Lord and ask the Holy Spirit, open my eyes to be aware.
Yeah, that's really good. I know that, even if you could take a hypothetical situation and make one town with only one race in it, there's still going to be different people, and there's always going to be uncomfortability with difference. Now, we're in America. It's going to be hard to find a place that doesn't have diversity, whether we see it or not.
Well, you can't go on a road trip without people wanting two different stations. Right?
It's true.
You can't. It's like same family, same ethnicity, right? You can't. How many times you get in an argument with your wife or your roommate or trying to figure out where are we going to go eat? Why? Because you got differences, you got opinions, let alone if you have layers of those different cultural things. And at some point, especially, I've talked about this, it's not even just ignoring what we think or ignoring your perspective. Just because you're an ethnicity doesn't mean that you're, especially, speaking to my white brothers and sisters, speaking to you, I think there can almost be this undertone that, you don't get to have an opinion anymore. You don't get to have a voice anymore. Your voice has been heard. I don't agree with that. I think that you do get to have an opinion because God gave you an opinion. You don't have to, now you don't, we're not going to take the scheme of shame based on identity and that has been targeted and strategically, I believe, used as a tool against African Americans in this nation, and then just flip the script and now we're just going to switch the power dynamics, and now all my white brothers and sisters is just shame, 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 shame. Why? Because you're white. But I think that there is a dynamic where you recognize this is my perspective. This is what I feel. However, in recognizing it, I can lay it before the Lord. I can die to myself so that we can walk in reconciliation, so that we can walk in right relationship. And that's that beautiful thing where it's like, it is going to be that messy tension. It is going to be those conversations of learning how to, again, just to use a very simple radio station, it's I'm not a huge country fan. I can appreciate great music, no matter the musician, but my wife is she is from Lexington, Kentucky. She loves, we get in the car, she wants to listen to Wide Open Space. It's like, my little girl, she's baptized in my little girl in country music. She wants to get on those road trips. But I love my wife. And so I want to create space, when Florida Georgia Line came in town for, during her birthday a couple years ago, man, boom, I'm right there. Now it helped that Nelly opened up for us. So
That's what I'm talking about.
that helped me out a little bit. I appreciated the Nelly. But I recognize, okay, here's my preference.
Yeah.
Here's my love. Here's my covenant. And you know what? I can die to my preference, to pursue this and to esteem and to value. And I think within a church context, okay, man, this might be your preference. What's the vision that we're moving towards?
Thanks, John. I appreciate the time you've taken, and I look forward to seeing what God's going to do, City of Lights. And
yeah, man.
And thank you for spending time sipping. There's actually water in here, guys. It's not really any coffee.
Not coffee.
Not coffee, but thank you, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.